What is going on, everybody? This is another episode of Coordinated Chaos. In this week's episode, we will be going over what happened in Week 15 of the NFL football season. We're going to be recapping mostly the more significant matchups of the weekend. There was a lot of inconsequential matchups as well this weekend, so we won't really talk about a whole lot of that, but more of the games that had more playoff implications and things of that nature. Then we're going to get into the Thursday Night Football preview between the Broncos and the Chargers. Then we're going to finish off with my same game parlay for Thursday Night Football, so we will get into a little bit more of that game in depth when it comes to the betting side of things. So let's go ahead and start off with what happened in Week 15. We're going to start with Thursday Night Football, just an absolute ugly game, just one of the worst Thursday Night Football games we've seen in a long time, and there were some really bad matchups earlier on in this season, but the Rams versus the 49ers in San Francisco, it was raining, so it made the product pretty just not great in general. Just aesthetically, it wasn't great. The passing games for both teams were just non-existent, essentially. Both teams were having trouble throwing the football, which obviously is like the best part, most exciting part of football at this point in time, really, in this day and age in the NFL. So, and especially when you're breaking it down to like a 49ers team that their passing attack is usually pretty fun, and Kyle Shanahan knows how to get people open. On the opposite side, you have Sean McVay and you have Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford, one of the better quarterbacks in all of football, one of the more fun quarterbacks to watch in football, considering all the different things he can do with the football. I mean, he's been unbelievable all season long for the most part, but like he really couldn't even get a whole lot going in this game. So it was just a disappointing product in general, mostly because of, I think, the weather that had a huge effect on it. But the Rams escaped with a narrow victory. It was strictly field goals the entire game for both teams, and the Rams just got the job done at the end of the day, which puts them in the lead of the NFC West after the Seahawks dropped a game on Sunday Night Football. We'll get to that a little bit later, but essentially the Rams are in the lead there for the NFC West. I believe they are going to take control of the division going forward. I think it's their division to lose at this point. The Seahawks have been a little bit too up and down for me. Like I said, we'll get to a little bit of that more in depth later on. 49ers have kind of just faltered quite a bit here. Too many injuries for them to overcome at this point in the season. But yeah, I just think, and the Cardinals, they're a little bit too Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde for me as well. They've been up and down all season as well. They've beaten up on the teams that they really should have beaten, which, I mean, I guess it's a credit to them. They're at least not losing those games, but anytime they come up against a formidable opponent, they have seemed to lose those games. So I don't like their chances if they do slide into the playoffs against, playoff contending teams. So, but yeah, Rams get a huge win on Thursday Night Football. Like I said, pop into first place in the NFC West, and they're looking to solidify their spot there in the playoffs. So next game, Chiefs versus Browns. This one was a little bit ugly too. I think there was a little bit of rain in this game as well. This was in Cleveland. Jameis Winston has one of the worst games of his season, and he threw multiple picks. I think it was 3 picks against the Broncos a couple weeks ago. And this was still one of his worst games. He turned the ball over a ton. It was not productive on the offensive side of the ball at all, throwing the football to his playmakers, even though he's been just better at that than anybody else that they've had all season. But it was a really bad showing against the Kansas City Chiefs. They seem to have his number quite a bit. Pat Mahomes does get injured in this game, which was a big deal. At least it was a potential big deal going forward, as they're still trying to hold everybody off for the 1 seed in the AFC, as the Bills are kind of nipping on their heels. But they get the job done, beat the Cleveland Browns. They kind of hop out to a big lead early in this game. I think it was like 20-0 at one point. Or 21-0 at one point, and they just kind of just maintained that lead throughout, even though when Patrick Mahomes did go down with his ankle injury, Carson Wentz just came in to fill in for the last 5 or so minutes of the game. So really the game was never out of control for the Kansas City Chiefs, and I think they could afford, and they felt like the vibe of the game, they could afford for Carson Wentz to come in and just kind of bleed the rest of the clock out, which is what they ended up doing. Looks like at this point in time, this is Wednesday, Patrick Mahomes has essentially practiced all week, so it looks like he is, going to start against the Houston Texans this upcoming week. So that is a huge development for the Chiefs, and the fact that they were going to try to hold everybody off for the number one seed in the AFC. That's going to go a long ways when it comes to the playoffs in general, when everybody has to come to Arrowhead to play, and you get that first round bye. Obviously, get a little bit of more of your players that are injured, a little bit more healthy. If they can get that bye week, that would be so big for them. So I know they're looking forward to that. So Chiefs get a big win. Browns, they're benching Jameis. DTR came in late in that game and finished the game off, and it looks like Jameis is done for the season. It looks like, well, potentially. I think Stefanski said something along the lines as like it's a week-to-week decision for him. So, but it looks like DTR is set to start the next game for the Browns. Next game, Bills versus Lions, game of the week, obviously. At least one of the games of the week. Most people were watching this game over the other one that was on at the exact same time, but it was also another big, playoff implication type game. But Bills versus Lions, this was like two juggernauts going up against each other, and there was a ton of points scored in this game. Just like last week with the Bills and the Rams going head-to-head and scoring a ton of points, they did it again this week. The Bills just bring out the best offensively in every team that they play, because you just have to play catch-up the entire time. The Bills' offense is exploding right now. Joe Brady has that offense clicking on all cylinders. Josh Allen's playing out of his mind right now. Basically, this offense has conformed to this perfect role player type of offense where everybody has a very specific job and everything is going to exact plan right now. Josh Allen is still the catalyst that makes everything. He's the engine that makes the car run. Obviously, he's one of the best players in all of football, if not he's definitely the best player in football this season. He is for sure the front runner to win the MVP at this point in time, as he should. He's essentially dragging this team to all these wins. I don't think there's a lot of quarterbacks in the league that if you put them in the exact same situation, you would get the exact same results that the Buffalo Bills have gotten so far this season. So that is basically the impetus of the MVP trophy and the award in general. Is just if you were to place anybody else in the same situation, how would it look? How would it go? And the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen, it's a one-of-one type situation right now where I think he's probably the only guy in the NFL that could do what he's doing for that team on offense. The defense is still a little bit concerning for the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, this is 2 weeks in a row they've let offenses score 40-plus on them, essentially. So, when it comes to the playoffs and things get a little bit tighter, I don't know how I, like that, based on the fact that, it seems like Sean McDermott right now is playing as much kind of zone as he possibly can. He's mixing in some more man than I was really anticipating him to do. But the zone is kind of helping them just kind of stay competitive, and they're doing the bend don't break type defense, and they happen to just be outscoring people at this point in time because Josh Allen and the offense are just completely on fire. So the Bills going forward in the playoffs, I still think it's going to come down to realistically a Bills-Chiefs AFC Championship game, and I think the Chiefs can probably hold off the Bills for the 1 seed. So you're looking at, in Arrowhead, Bills versus Chiefs. I fully think that's going to be the matchup. I really think the Chiefs, just like last year, I was thinking about this the last couple of days, and everybody is so down on the Chiefs and the way they've looked as of late, and Patrick Mahomes' injury and everybody, and it seems like the stock is completely down on the Chiefs. But if you think about it, last year at this exact same time, we were thinking and saying the same things about the Chiefs as we are this season, which obviously we know what happened last season. They got hot going to the playoffs. They got hot in the playoffs, and then they went on to still win the Super Bowl. So I'm not going to say the Chiefs are dead by any stretch. I'll just never say that they're out of it completely whenever you have the combination of Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Steve Spagnuolo, Chris Jones, Travis Kelce. It's just too many good players on that team and too many good coaches, and probably the greatest quarterback we've ever seen play, and Patrick Mahomes in general. So I'll never say they're dead. And like I said, I fully expect AFC Championship game in Arrowhead between the Buffalo Bills and the Chiefs. So let's go on to the next game. I'm sorry. Let me talk about the Lions here. We were talking about the Bills for so long there. The Lions, obviously, they lose this game. It's a big one. Obviously, they're trying to hold off, realistically, the Vikings and the Eagles in the NFC to hold on to that 1 seed right now. And they dropped this game to the Buffalo Bills. It's a big one. This is the first time in a while it looks like a team can really score on their defense. And they lost some more defensive players in this game to injury, season-ending injury for that matter. That was Ali McNeil, who is by far their best defensive lineman at this point in time since Aiden Hutchinson has been out with the broken leg. And then their best DB, really, maybe you say Brian Branch is better as an overall player, but one of the more important secondary position players for them, Carlton Davis, he is out with a broken jaw. So it looks like both those guys are out for the season. That is a huge blow. And then I think Khalil Dorsey's his name, and one of their other cornerbacks who would have came in to supplant Carlton Davis as he was out. He is out for the season as well. So a lot of really bad injuries, and then we learn after the fact that David Montgomery also has torn his MCL. So I did see a report today that they're getting like a second or third opinion on the knee injury for David Montgomery. They're trying to do everything they can to maybe there's a version or a way that he can rehab to get that knee back to where it needs to be if it's not completely torn. There's a little bit of information that's up in the air for that situation, but it looks like he may be out for the rest of the season as well. And so if you don't have the knuckles to the flash when it comes to Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, that run game starts to become a little bit more one-dimensional than it was previously when you had both those players at your disposal. You had the hammer and David Montgomery. You had the speed and the lightning effect of Jahmyr Gibbs. And if it's just Jahmyr Gibbs back there, obviously he's a very good player and he can handle a large portion of the workload. But you're going to have to supplement a lot of his work as well to a guy like Craig Reynolds if David Montgomery can't go anymore. So lots of big injuries for the Lions going forward, and I think unfortunately for them, it may hurt them to the point where they no longer are the favorites to get to the Super Bowl and win it. Because I think the entire season up until this point, it has been the Lions or bust essentially. So in my opinion, as an Eagles fan, I have started to shift my idea of who I think or who I want the Eagles to potentially match up with in an NFC championship. Obviously, you got to get there first, and you got to win some games that are going to be tough against some NFC teams that are getting hot late, obviously here. But if everything goes to plan, the Eagles make it to the NFC championship game, I'm starting to think I want the Lions over some of these other teams that seem to be a little bit more healthy right now, because if the Buffalo Bills are scoring 40-plus points on the Detroit Lions defense, I would kind of be curious to see what the Eagles could potentially do against them, especially with the Eagles having the number one defense in all of football as well. So a lot to think about there, obviously. Let's go on to the next game, though. Buccaneers versus Chargers. This was a game that was very interesting. I had no good idea. I didn't have a feel for this game whatsoever. I did not want to bet it, didn't want to touch it. There was a little bit of bias going into this game for me. I'm a kind of a Justin Herbert fan. I didn't want that to affect the way I picked the game or bet the game and whatnot. As well as I really do like Baker Mayfield quite a bit, and the Buccaneers are a scary team for me as an Eagles fan. I don't want the Buccaneers and the Eagles to match up against each other in the playoffs if at all possible, because I just think Baker is a wild card when it comes to stuff like that, and I just wouldn't want to see him in the playoffs in general. So, but the Buccaneers get a huge win here. I mean, completely blow out the Chargers. I think the Chargers' injuries are actually hurting them quite a bit as well, kind of like the Lions I was just speaking about. Just their run game is kind of non-existent at this point. J.K. Dobbins goes down a couple weeks ago, and now the running game is just very iffy. It's Gus Edwards and Kamani Vidal, and I just don't think those two guys are getting the job done right now. So the run game is a little iffy, and then obviously the weapons on the outside for Justin Herbert are just not there. Quentin Johnston has his drop issues. Josh Palmer's an okay player. Ladd McConkey's obviously a stud, but he's been a little bit banged up as of late. Then you even got a guy like Jalen Reagor, who is just a misfit in the NFL at this point. He makes plays every once in a while, every blue moon, but you can't rely on him at all. Their tight end, Will Dissly, went down with an injury, so you got Stone Smart stepping up. I just don't know what to even feel about the Chargers. I mean, the defense seemed like it was a good unit, 2 to 3 weeks ago, but now as of the last few weeks, they have been getting completely carved up. So I don't know what to think about the Chargers, especially going into the playoffs, and they're going to want one of those wild card spots. I just don't have a whole lot of confidence in them. Have a whole lot more confidence in the Buccaneers making some upsets happen in the playoffs for the NFC. So Bucs get a huge win there. Obviously, they take over the number 1 spot in the NFC South, so they are the division leader currently for that at 8-6. Falcons are going to want to try to catch them. I don't think it's going to happen based on the remaining schedule for the Buccaneers. They have 3 what seems to be cakewalks to win the rest of the 3 games left on their schedule. So Bucs get a huge win there. Eagles versus Steelers. This was the other game that was on at 4:25 that a lot of people were paying attention to, other than the Bills and Lions game. Eagles get a big W here. Obviously, there was a lot of turmoil, a lot of controversy. Kind of covered a little bit of it last week on the podcast about the A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts situation, the passing game not looking as good as it probably should, Saquon Barkley getting too many carries. There was a lot of narratives out there, a lot of agendas out there for certain people that wanted to hop on the bandwagon or hop off the bandwagon. And the Eagles come out and start slinging the rock. Jalen Hurts throws for 290 yards and 3 total touchdowns, 2 passing touchdowns, 1 tush-push rushing touchdown, and really just kind of shut up the haters a little bit, at least for 1 week. It was an all-around good performance from Jalen Hurts. He was decisive. He was getting the ball out of his hands quickly. Still had a little bit of like a lull in like the third quarter, but at the end of the day, they got the job done, beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. They were without George Pickens, so that was a huge deal for them. I think with George Pickens, it would have been a little bit more competitive, but is just without him, he is like their one go-to weapon, and without that guy, it's very easy. I feel like, especially for a very good defense like the Philadelphia Eagles, as the number 1 defense in all of football, to cover wide receiving core and like just a team in general that just doesn't have that many explosive weapons in general. So the Eagles defense was absolutely suffocating. Russell Wilson couldn't do anything. They had like 163 total yards on the day. At the end there, the Pittsburgh Steelers punt off to the Eagles with like 10:29 left on the clock, and they're thinking, we're going to get another shot at this. We're going to get another chance to get the ball back and score and make this game a little bit more competitive, make it a one-possession game at one point. Eagles get the ball on the 3-yard line with 10 minutes and 29 seconds left, and the Pittsburgh Steelers never saw the ball again. It was like a 21 play, 88-yard drive that the Eagles drove all the way down the field, killed the entire rest of the clock, which is just a weapon that you aren't prepared for as an opposing team, that the Eagles are able to do with the run game, obviously, the passing game, and how efficient it can be at times. And the Pittsburgh Steelers were obviously on the wrong end of it on Sunday, and so you saw the Eagles, the bullies, bully the bully, basically. I mean, it came down to that. Like, the Eagles just out-physicaled the Pittsburgh Steelers, which does not happen often at all, especially against a Mike Tomlin-led Steelers. Like, they are usually the more physical. They're usually the bullies on the field, and the Eagles were taking none of it, and that just like gives me more confidence as an Eagles fan moving forward that no matter who we step onto the field with that Sunday, we're going to be as physical, if not more physical than them, and they're going to feel it by the fourth quarter, and that's when the Saquon Barkley runs happen. That's when the A.J. Brown broken tackles for 80-yard touchdowns happen. It's a nice weapon to have whenever you're the biggest and baddest and strongest and even sometimes the fastest on the field. So that's just the Eagles right now look like, in a lot of power rankings, people are putting them number 1 in the league right now based on the fact that the Lions have all the injuries they got going on, the Bills. Some people don't trust the defense. I'm in the same camp. I just think the Eagles are the best overall team currently right now. Not saying that they can't be beat in the playoffs. Like I said, I don't want to see a hot Baker team with the Buccaneers. Don't really want to see a hot Packers team with Jordan Love. And like I said, between those two, I would rather see the Detroit Lions over those two teams right now in the playoffs if I'm the Eagles. So it's an interesting spot to be in considering how all of the things have gone all season long, but that's just where we're at. Packers versus Seahawks. This one was not very close. Really, the Packers kind of jumped all over the Seahawks at the beginning there. And then obviously Geno Smith goes down with a knee injury, so the game kind of just turns upside down on the Seahawks. It's in Seattle. They were hoping they could kind of take control of the NFC West, or kind of solidify themselves as the front runner there. Even though the Rams did win on Thursday night, they couldn't get the job done against the Packers. Packers were playing good ball at this point in time in the season. Josh Jacobs running really, really well right now, and then all of the playmakers they have on the outside in Green Bay, especially Romeo Doubs, who had a huge game in this game as well, coming off of an injury. So the Packers are slinging around the field right now. It just comes down to Jordan Love making good decisions, and it seems like he is on the right track right now. Next game, Vikings versus Bears. This was the part of the doubleheader Monday Night Football game. Bad game. Caleb Williams and the Bears look absolutely distraught. They're terrible right now. I feel bad for Caleb Williams. A lot of people don't feel bad for him, to be fair. But I think he's a good player, and I think he's been put in a terrible situation all season long. Matt Eberflus stunk. Shane Waldron stunk. You can't really blame Thomas Brown a whole lot. He was at one point the passing coordinator, and now he is literally the head coach. So too much dip on his chip, to be completely honest. And then the Vikings, obviously, they are now also 12-2, tied with the Eagles and the Detroit Lions, vying for that 1 seed. I think the Lions have the head-to-head right now on the Vikings, but this is going to come down to the wire for all three of these teams to try to steal the 1 seed from each other. So this is going to be very competitive. The Vikings have shown they are no fluke. I thought they would be, and maybe Sam Darnold turns into a pumpkin in the playoffs. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe this is his turnaround. Maybe they give him a larger contract and extension this season, which I wouldn't be mad at them for. I mean, if they win at least one playoff game, I feel like you have a hard decision to make between giving him an extension or just moving on straight to J.J. McCarthy after the season. And I just don't know if I trust J.J. McCarthy to just take over immediately and be as good as Sam Darnold has been this season. So Vikings have a lot of decisions to make going into the offseason, even though obviously we're still in this season. But I just personally don't see the Vikings winning the Super Bowl this season. But this is a fantastic, great first step in the right direction for them. Falcons versus Raiders. This was the last game of Monday Night Football, and realistically, the only reason I'm even talking about this is the Falcons won this game, kept them kind of competitive in the NFC South. They're 7-7. Like I said, I don't think they're still going to they're not going to pass or surpass the Buccaneers. Even though if they do end up with the same record somehow, some way, the Falcons they do hold the tiebreaker because they have beat them both times face to face. So Falcons, all they're asking for right now is to win the last 3 games of the season and hopefully tie with the Buccaneers. They got to lose at least one of those last 3 games as well. But it's going to be an interesting challenge considering the fact that they have officially benched Kirk Cousins. He looked terrible on Monday Night Football against the Raiders. Raiders are one of the worst teams in all of football. Almost lost that game to Desmond Ridder and that terrible defense of the Raiders. Desmond Ridder, just an absolute disaster. Couldn't even get the ball to their best player on offense. Brock Bowers is basically nowhere to be found because just Desmond Ridder is a disaster. But the Falcons barely slipped by, but they are benching Kirk Cousins for Michael Penix. He is going to start the rest of the season, which I think is a great idea at this point because Kirk has shown at this point it is just not good. He is making bad decisions. The velocity is not there for his arm. He's clearly still kind of hampered by the Achilles injury. So they made a knee-jerk kind of decision, but I don't blame them for it at this point. They might as well see what they have in him. They feel like at this point, if they're going to find their way into the playoffs, they might as well get him some playoff experience, some football experience in general. But yeah, this is going to be very interesting going forward. I'm really looking forward to seeing it, honestly. That pretty much wraps it up for the recap. Let's go straight into Thursday Night Football preview. It is the Broncos versus the Chargers. The Broncos are 3-point underdogs to the Chargers, which I thought was a little bit interesting. The Broncos obviously did not have that great of a game against the Colts, and so maybe Vegas is seeing a little bit of a trend here in the direction that Bo Nix and that offense and Sean Payton and them are going. But the Chargers also just got blown out by the who did they just play? Oh, the Buccaneers, and it's just I don't know if I trust the Chargers to do anything here. Both these teams aren't necessarily on the stock up. If anybody, I guess, would be the Broncos, considering they still won the football game against the Colts. But really, that was a Jonathan Taylor stupid dropped touchdown run, fumble, or whatever you want to call it, into the end zone, away from being a 20-7 football game pretty late on in that game. So the Broncos really should have lost that game against the Colts, which would have been the Colts are still kind of in contention for the AFC South, but the Texans won and locked that division up. So, man, I don't know. I feel like maybe because this feels like really weird. This feels like a Chargers line to me because the Chargers got blown out. So maybe I just like take the Chargers money line here. I don't think I'm going to bet it, but if I were, maybe Chargers money line is what I'd go here. I don't think I want to mess with any of the spread. But the one thing I do kind of want to do is a same game parlay for Thursday Night Football, and this is an 8-leg parlay for plus 900. So you're looking at, like a decent payback here, obviously. So let's start with the first leg here. Or the first 2 legs here. Justin Herbert and Bo Nix both over 175 plus passing yards. Then you got Marvin Mims and Stone Smart both over 25 receiving yards. Ladd McConkey over 50 receiving yards. Cortland Sutton over 40 receiving yards. Gus Edwards and Javonte Williams both 25 plus rushing yards. And that is your 8-leg parlay for plus 900. I personally think all those can hit. Honestly, the 2 ones that are a little bit like sketchy to me are the 2 quarterbacks going over 175, because there's just I feel like this might be a little bit low scoring in general, and so there might be just like a little bit too much rushing in this game. But I feel like 175 is not that big of a margin to eclipse, so I still feel pretty decent about it. The Stone Smart and Marvin Mims are 2 very iffy ones, but Marvin Mims has been involved a little bit more in that Broncos passing attack as of late, and that's just what he's more of an explosive element. So that's like essentially one big pass from him, and he goes over his total there. Stone Smart is obviously taking the place of Will Dissly, so he's getting a lot more run than he would have obviously previously in the past at tight end. So he's essentially starting now, and I think he's going to be the guy that they kind of lean on the most when it comes to anybody in the middle of the field outside of Ladd McConkey. So I like that as well. And then the rest of those guys are just starters that should really go over those totals in general. So I like all that stuff. Like I said, it's plus 900. I'm not going to bet a ton on it. It's going to be a small little bet for me. But at the end of the day, that's a big return if it were to hit. So, and I think it's very possible. So that pretty much wraps it up for this week's podcast. I appreciate everybody listening, and please follow on all the socials. Subscribe to us on YouTube as well as follow on the TikTok, and stay tuned for my bets of the weekend later on in the week. I appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and peace.